The opinions expressed on the ACB Media Network are those of the content providers and should not be viewed as an endorsement of any product or service. Nor does it reflect the views of the American Council of the Blind, its elected officials, or its staff.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for coming to this presentation by The Blind Kitchen. I say presentation, but I really hope to have an interactive session later in the talk. So my name is Deborah Erickson, and I'm the executive chef and founder of The Blind Kitchen, and we provide adaptive cooking tools for people with vision loss who want to cook safely, confidently, and independently in their own kitchens. So also, I want you to be thinking about as we're going through and hearing each other speak, is what would you like the topic to be for me to open up for next month's call? So last month, someone asked if we could talk a little bit about grilling. So that is where I'm going to start. First of all, it's a good place to start with what is grilling? What makes it different than like sautéing or boiling or baking or roasting? And basically, the definition of grilling means you're cooking over a heat source, and that can be charcoal, that can be fire, it can be under your broiler. But where there is no protection of a pan between your food and the heat source. So basically, your broiler, where the heat comes from the top down, is grilling turned upside down. It means the food is going to be affected by the heat source without protection. Now, of course, if you're on an outdoor grill, like where you're barbecuing or where you're, grilling over gas or whatever, you have usually a grill there, a rack, because otherwise the food would be right inside the fire. So there's minimal protection between the food and the heat source. So that requires different tools and different ways of doing it. Now, some people call grilling, like if you do a hamburger on top of a griddle or a grill. But again, there's not an open heat source. It's like cooking in a pan or cooking on a griddle. So don't confuse the griddling with the grilling. And barbecuing can be the same thing, but barbecuing usually refers to cooking foods low and slow in a closed container, like a barbecue grill where you close the lid. And so the smoke and the heat, it's going to be lower, not as high as generally a fire would be or flames, but it will break down the tough proteins in food slowly. And you can also use different types of wood and things to infuse the food with flavor. And you can actually bake on a barbecue grill. It's kind of crazy. So that's what grilling is. It means your food's going to be exposed to the heat source with minimal protection, saving the food. You have to control that. So I'll talk about a couple of tools that we have in the Blind Kitchen that help to make grilling and I'm specifically speaking to outdoors, but everything I'm saying here, for the most part, can also apply to broiling, where you've got the heat coming down from the top of your oven on top of the food, and there's nothing in between it, no lid, no foil. The heat is going to be high and intense, and so some of these tools apply to broiling as well. So keep that in mind. And the advantages of grilling and of broiling are that when the meat or food, vegetables, get to a certain degrees, chemistry happens. It's called caramelization or the Maillard effect. And basically, when food hits 337 degrees, things change. And the way you can mostly see this is in your toaster, which there's the heat is hitting the food with minimal protection. The toast is exposed to those wires that are hot, and you can if you smell your bread before you put it in the toaster, it smells yeasty, it's soft, you can squeeze it, but when you put it in the toaster and you push the lever down, when it hits 337 degrees, that changes the food. The sugar's brown, the it dries out a bit. Toast is crunchy as opposed to bread, which is squishy, and that is that effect. And that happens anytime when you're making cookies or biscuits. When that food hits 337 degrees, that's when that magic starts to happen. Now, if that temperature goes much higher, it can burn. We've all had our smoke detector go off in our house, when we burnt our toast, left it down for too long or whatever. So it's a balance of trying to manage those temperatures. And that's why, just for the record, for a lot of baking where you don't want it to be grilled or caramelized, like seared like a steak, that's 350 degrees. That's how most stove manufacturers, that's the closest to 337 you can get. If you cook cookies at 325, they're not gonna hit that golden brown caramelization stage. So that's what you're going to be doing. Now, if you're searing something like a steak or you're trying to roast corn where you want it to really be charred, and charred is basically burnt, but it is burnt, a controlled burn, then you're going to want your heat to be higher, and then you're going to have to really be ready to know when to turn it and things like that. So I'm going to talk about a couple of tools that help people with vision loss to be able to grill and broil. So the first thing I'll talk about is the grill basket, because losing food on your grill when you can't see it and you really can't touch it because it's hot, not only is the food on top of it generally hot, so is the air that's coming up, the heat being generated by the gas, or the heat being generated by the charcoal. That is going to prohibit you from touching it safely, and you don't want to. So you want another tool. So we have something called the grill basket, and it's about 14 inches wide and about 7 inches high and about an inch thick. So it's just like a rectangle basket, but it's kind of thin. It's only about an inch thick, and it has a handle on it. So if I'm wanting to cook, it'll hold like 2 large steaks, no bigger than an inch thick, but that's a nice size steak, or 4 petite steaks that you can put in it. And the lid opens up on that box with the hinges. So then you're going to drop your seasoned meat inside that basket and then pull the top lid back down and then lock it into place. So when I go to cook, let's say the steaks, or I can put 4 hamburgers in there, I can put sausages or hot dogs, but that's a different story. We'll talk about that in a minute. When I go to turn those 4 hamburgers or those 4 steaks, because I have the one handle, I can just do it in one quick flip. They're all going to flip at the same time and remain inside the basket. And I'm not going to lose them into the flame because it's almost impossible to retrieve. Even if you can see, once they hit an open flame, you're in trouble. So this basket allows you to neatly flip them over. Now, what you do lose in this that other people can see is that you're not going to have those lovely grill marks that they talk about all the time, or the crosshatch marks, because your food is not in contact with the grill top. It's in contact with a basket, that it isn't going to allow it to reach that temperature for the short time that you're going to be cooking that meat. So, disclaimer, number 1, it's safe. You can do it. You don't have to search for the food. It's all contained in this basket that you prepared, but you won't get those grill marks. And frankly, I don't care. If the food tastes good, that's what I care about. So that's the grill basket. So we were talking about sausages or hot dogs. If you're cooking those, there is another tool we have, and we call it just a skewer, but it's a double skewer basically. So if I'm cooking, let's say I've got cherry tomatoes and I want to grill those, and I want to grill them on top of my grill. A skewer is a wonderful way to do it. And this is the same way you can use this on your George Foreman grill. We can talk about that if that's where people want to go. But I'm basically talking about outdoor grills. When food cooks, especially food like mushrooms and pineapple chunks and cherry tomatoes that are round, as they cook, you put your bamboo skewer in there and you put them all on there. The food is going to release steam. It's going to make that hole get bigger. The skewer is going through, and it's going to get softer. So, in the very real world, if you're trying to turn that skewer so that you want to get the other side to be against that heat source and get that side to char, you could very easily just be twisting that bamboo skewer inside of those tomatoes with them not even moving. And you can't really know or tell because they're hot. You can't touch them. But with the double skewer, it's made out of stainless steel and it has two prongs. It has a handle, it's about 5 inches, and then about 6 inches where there are two prongs, two stainless steel pointed skewers. So when you put those cherry tomatoes on there, or those mushrooms, or the pineapple chucks, you're going to make sure that cherry tomato runs through both of those skewers, both of those. And you can put on 5 or 6 of them. And then when you put them on the grill, it cannot turn uselessly. You have to, you flip them 180 degrees and they all have to flip. They have no choice because they have 2 points of contact. And the things I've spoken of so far are not made for people with vision loss. These are things to make cooking easier for people that can see. So they just really lend themselves to us very well. So that, and then you, on those, the other place you run into trouble is if you're making hot dogs or sausages. Oftentimes, it's hard to tell how much they've rolled over. But if you have that double skewer going through them, and you can actually use that double skewer to do, if you, instead of putting the hot dog on like straight up and down like a popsicle on a popsicle stick, if you spear it through the middle of it sideways, you can cook 4 or 5 on there at the same time, depending on how thick they are, and then flip them all at the same time. And no, so there's no more trying to find where'd that thing roll to? Did it fall in between the grates of the grill? It eliminates that. But that will give you those grill marks that people find so attractive if you want them, because they are touching the top of the grill that's in immediate contact with the heat. So that's another one. Probably the most important tool that we have, and we have a grilling and barbecue collection if you're interested. It has 10 tools in it, I think. And probably the most important, I would say, is the talking thermometer. Because the talking thermometer, if you're cooking chicken or any kind of poultry, you can make your friends and family seriously ill if you undercook it. It has to be cooked to 165 degrees. And we can't see if the juices are running clear. And we can't see if it's no longer pink in the middle. So we have to have another way. And the talking thermometer is the perfect way. You just put it into the thickest part of the meat, wherever it is, press a button, and it will tell you. The other thing that makes the talking thermometer so blind friendly for us is because some people have some vision. But it's hard for them to see. So if you're trying to look at your thermometer, even if it has a large digital readout, your face is close to the food if you're straining to see it. Let's not even talk about how exhausting eye strain can be. But now your face is near it, your mouth, your nose, your hair. It's quite unsanitary, and it looks funny to other people if you're bending over that close to the food. It's so nice just to be able to touch a button and have that information given to you. It's so much more elegant. So the talking thermometer is a real good tool, and not just anytime you're cooking food that needs to be cooked to a safe temperature. And that can also tell you, like, so cooking is a skill. You don't just start out being able to do it perfectly from day one. It takes practice, it takes experience. And so if you want your steaks medium rare, you will start to learn how many minutes you cook it on one side. You'll start to learn what temperature that center part is at. If somebody was in last week and they asked how my wife can see, and she knows how she likes her steak. How can I use the talking thermometer? And the thing is she can see, and she'll say, "That's what I want." Then you temp that meat at that point, and then you'll know how long to cook it for her to get it to the way she likes it. So the talking thermometer is a really good tool. So I'll tell you about another tool, and this has to do with cutting and chopping. And basically it is a corn cob cleaner. And what it does is it strips if you're roasting corn, and some people have dental problems, it's hard for them to eat meat, so you have to cut it off the cob. And anybody, whether you've done it, whether the corn is raw or whether it's cooked, that's a very difficult thing to do. It's easy to only cut half of the kernel off it down the side of it, or to accidentally get caught up in the husk. So what you do with this thing, it's got four pieces. It is a plastic tube that's basically about 3 inches around. Inside that tube are there's blades in the bottom. It's about 11 inches tall. There's little blades in the bottom of the tube, and they will hold your ear of corn upright, straight up and down. Then you've got a lid that you put on it, and the lid has a hole in it, and you put the lid on that, and so now you can reach in that little hole in the lid with your finger, and you can feel it's about an inch around, and you can feel the top of the corn. So now your corn is held in place, and you've got your two hands back. You don't have to be holding that. So now the corn is upright. There's a long stainless steel tube, about an inch around, very strong, and at the end of it, it's got jagged teeth. And those teeth are sharp enough to remove those corn kernels from the corn cob, but they're not sharp enough to cut your fingers. They can do the job without cutting your fingers. So you then take that tube, and that stainless steel tube, and you already identified that corn cob is being held upright. You put it on, and then you push down, turn a little bit, maybe push down, and those little jagged teeth not only remove the corn, but they do it cleanly, because corn has a lot of liquid starch in it, and it'll have steam in it, and it can be a sticky mess if you go to remove it. With this tool, all those squirts get contained in the tube, and the corn gets contained in the tube. So that's easier for us to know where the corn is that's falling off that cob. And when you pull it up, the corn cob almost always comes right back up in the steel tube. And then there's a plunger that you can just plunge it and throw it away. So, and you can do several ears of corn in those. So that's a real nice tool to remove corn from a cob if you want to. And grilling corn is a delicious way. And you can make grilled corn salads and things like that, because that caramelization, that searing, make for a whole different flavor profile for the corn. So I think I'll go ahead. There's more tools that I can talk about, but let's do heat protection for 1 minute. So if you've ever seen Of gloves, that's the brand name, but they're really, really expensive. We have heat gloves that we use in the kitchen inside, but I never want people to put their hands in the oven, and that's another conversation. You do need to have your gloves on, and then you just grab the front of the rack and pull it out. Outdoors on the grill, though, you have to put your hands over heat for the most part, because that meat's coming up in between different kinds of food. So the grilling gloves have 4 fingers and a thumb cavity, which makes you have much more tactile information. And they also have silicone designs all over them, the front and the back, and they come up not quite up to your elbow, but you're not going to go any further over the grill than that. And so they allow you to have flexibility to be able to touch the grill, not the grill itself, but like the tools that you're using on top of the grill, the skewers or whatever. They'll help protect your hands from heat. But they also give you much more flexibility and protect your arms. So that's the other heat related tool that has to do with grilling. So, if it's okay, I'd like to open the floor to questions, and we can take it either further into the grilling, but it's a diverse group, I'm sure, and I want to take the group wherever the conversation leads, where the interests lie.
All right, if anybody has any questions for Deborah, please let us know. Raise your hand. And if you didn't hear the instructions on how to raise your hand, it's Alt-Y on a computer, Option Y on the Mac. On the iPhone, it's under more actions, reactions or more options. And then on the phone is *9. Jeff.
Hi, thank you so much for presenting this, Deborah. This is a great topic. Question I have on the tomatoes, like a shish kebab and grilled peaches or pineapple. I can't imagine you use the talking thermometer on items like that. What's a trick of the trade for items like that when you know when they're done or not?
That's a really good question. Are you the steak guy from last time?
I am.
So you're right. I would not use a talking thermometer on those. I'm going to let my nose guide me.
Okay.
Yeah, because you don't want things to burn. You want to get into the point where you think they're going to burn. You can start smelling, say, "Oh, that feels kind of close." Just like toast, you can do that. So it comes with experience. But the tool that you'd probably want to use with that is a double spatula, which there are different models and different types. We sell one in the Blind Kitchen that has a rectangle on the bottom, and it's all made out of stainless steel, and then the handle curves up, and then there's a smaller rectangle at the top. And what those do is they serve as a combination between a spatula and tongs. So if you're going underneath that peach to get it, you may or may not be wearing your heat gloves to find it, because most food, even if you're over a heat source, if it's like half a peach, you're going to be able to touch the top half of it, a couple of seconds after you turn it. But you still got to be careful. But you could wear your heat gloves for sure. And then you are going to slide it under the double spatula, the bottom big triangle under the bottom of it, and then you take the top one and you gently squeeze it. You're not going to squeeze all the juice out of your beautiful peach, but you gently squeeze it a little bit, so then when you lift it, you are holding it. You can turn it sideways and you can turn it upside down to make sure that you've turned it all the way so it can grill the other side. And the beauty of this design of this one, why we selected, because there are a million different kinds of them, is because the top rectangle is smaller. So it's a little easier to get the food off of it when you're ready to dispose, to set it down. If the rectangle is just as big as the one on the top, you've got to do a lot more acrobats to try and get it off, cleanly and with control.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know what you're saying, because I have tried the same size, and you're right, it is difficult. That makes sense.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you so
for the
much.
question.
Thank you.
So. Allison? Star 6.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Did you call Melissa?
No, I said Allison.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. You cut out a bit.
You're next,
Okay.
Melissa.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. You called on me, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My question, a couple questions for you, Deborah, is how do you safely teach a blind person to use a gas stove? Because I have kind of protective parents, and they worry about me getting burned and stuff catching on fire. And my second question is, how do you tell when a scrambled egg is done? And do they still make the stoves with the round burners? Because I grew up on an electric stove.
Okay, those are all good questions. So the electric stoves with the round burners are probably the easiest ones to use to know if your pan is centered on the hot stove. And I can appreciate your parents' concern, but you can do this safely. And I'll explain to you how you know on a gas stove or a glass top stove, which is the hardest one and the scariest one until you get control over it. So you don't need any special equipment. You just need to remember this principle. If you are cooking on a stovetop and your pan is, first of all, you have the right size pan, the heat source has to be completely underneath the pan. It can't be sticking out one side or the other. If you've got a small pan on a big burner, you're going to be in trouble. So you've got to make sure that your heating element, and you'll have to figure out with your parents how to do that. And so you've got the right pan now, you've got the right stovetop, the right burner. All of us can touch the top rim of a hot pan for just a second, even if it's really, really hot and the water's boiling, going crazy. Deep frying, as long as you can touch it for just a second. When I say touch it, I mean just a tap Okay, you can't hold it there for any length of time or you will get burned, but you can tap it because when your finger comes away from it, the air will cool that immediately before your skin has a chance to get injured. Now, if you touch the hot water or if you touch hot residual food is going to come back with your finger and continue to burn you. So you can't do that. It's got to be the clean rim of a hot pan where nothing's going to come back with your finger when you finish tapping it. So what I do when I'm cooking most of the time is I am tapping the top part of my pan at the stovetop. And I spend a lot of time at the stovetop just because I want to smell and hear what's going on. So while I'm there, what I'm doing is I am touching it all around the top, maybe 2 o'clock, maybe 4 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock. And what I'm checking for with those little taps is to make sure it's equally hot all the way around. But let's say I'm stirring a pot of hot sauce and all of a sudden and somehow I knock it off, but I don't know I've knocked it off center. I don't feel the slight movement, but a couple things are going to happen. First of all, well, let me finish up this thought and then I'll go there. So now I'm checking again, as I always do. I'm touching it, I'm touching it, I'm touching it. And all of a sudden, when I'm touching it at 10 o'clock, it's way hotter than it is at 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. What that tells me is I am off center and the heat, instead of being trapped underneath the pan, it's climbing the side of it. And that's why it's going to be a lot hotter. So what I'm going to do then is gently nudge it towards where it's too hot. Gently nudge the pan a little bit, and then I'll give it a minute or two, and then I'll be checking again. Oh, it's still too hot over there. I must not pushed it far enough. And then I nudge it again, and I'm just going to keep adjusting until it's equally hot all the way around. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
And I also want to comment that a lot of parents, they tend to protect their visually impaired children from using stoves and ovens. I've read about that.
Yeah, that protection comes from a very good place. I'm a parent and my kids still scare me and they're taller than me. But it comes from a good place. But the other thing is, if your parents don't have vision loss, they don't know this information. So it might be good for you the Blind Kitchen has a whole lot of videos. In fact, there's a video on this. It's all available for free that exactly explains what I just explained to you. So I'll tell you about another tool that might give your parents a little more peace of mind. I know it has helped with students that I've taught, is that we have something called a flame tamer, and basically it is a fiberglass fire blanket. So it is about 40 inches wide, 40 inches tall. It's like a blanket that's, but it's big enough to cover most electrical stoves or gas stoves. And its job, fire needs oxygen to burn. And if you smother that and block the oxygen of the air, then most small fires will go out. That it just is, it's science. That's what happens. But it's better than us trying to aim a fire extinguisher at it. First of all, we can't see the flame. It's going to be a mess. Or throwing baking soda at it. Again, that'll be a mess. This blanket doesn't make a mess. It's easy to grab. You don't put it near the stove. You put it in your kitchen at a place where you have access to it, should you suspect that there's a fire on the stovetop. And then you just throw it on top of the stove. So that's another, we'll call it a security blanket for your parents.
Deborah, can I jump in? So I think one thing to throw out there, definitely please comment, I might be off base, but if you do that, it is imperative that you also shut the gas off, because while the flame's out, gas is still going to be coming out of the stove.
Oh,
if
excellent
it's a gas
point.
grill.
Excellent point. Or even electric. Yeah, even though you want to cut off the heat source for sure.
Particularly the gas.
Particularly, you're right.
Yeah. And where could I get a stove with round burners?
You just go to any appliance store. They should have them. I mean, there's all different kinds now. You've got the induction burner stoves. Those are called electric coil is what you're looking for. But they're still available. but you need to go to a appliance store where they sell refrigerators and stoves and ovens and dishwashers and all kinds of different equipment like that. There's a lot of different brands out there and a lot of different companies that do that.
All right, well, we've got Melissa.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Sheila. Hi, Miss Erickson. This is Melissa. I'm from Washington State, and it's nice to meet you, first of all.
Oh, hello.
Um, boy,
We're
you
neighbors.
oh, cool. Where are you located, ma'am?
I'm in Oregon.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
I
we're
just,
about 3 hours,
oh my goodness.
about 3 hours from each other. So, wow, I'd like to come visit the Blind Kitchen and meet you, and
Oh,
that'd be
maybe
kind of fun.
write to me at info@theblindkitchen.com and we'll have you come during some of the filming. Maybe you could be a guest.
I don't know. I'm not an expert cook. I'm not like my dad. My dad's in the restaurant business, so but I enjoy cooking when I can. But I want to talk about the George Foreman grill. I need to get another one because I bought mine over a year ago for as kind of an early Christmas gift for myself, but I accidentally sat on it the other day and now it's yeah, and so now it's no longer in good use. So I need to throw it away and get a new one.
I hope
But
it wasn't plugged in.
no, it was totally unplugged. It was totally unplugged. Because I was getting ready to clean it, clean. But
Sure.
what I love about a George Foreman is I had a wrist injury in 2021, 2022 due to an on the job injury, and I can't twist things very well anymore. So I can't flip things over anymore because it hurts my hand. So I love the George Foreman because it cooks on both sides and it's safe. It's easy to clean up, those kind of things. But my question is, how would I know if that steak or those pork chops or hamburger, how do you know, like if someone says, okay, I want it medium well, how do you know that when you can't see? I'm totally blind myself. So I've always wondered how you know that other than to listen for the sizzle sounds.
Yeah, nope. So there's a more scientific way to do it, and that is to get one of those talking thermometers. And you
Okay.
can actually, so I love George Foreman grills. I think that they
Yes.
are absolutely wonderful, and especially for cooking with vision loss. You don't have to flip things, even, and accidentally drop it somewhere, even if your hands are fine. I love that it cooks on both sides at the same time. And
Yes.
one thing I use a skewer if you're using round vegetables, and they don't roll down then. They stay on the skewer,
Huh.
and the end of the skewer hangs out. So
Uh-huh.
you know right where your food is. You're not guessing. And so
Interesting.
yeah, so if you're using a talking thermometer for like a pork chop, I think pork chops they have to be cooked to like 145 to be safe. Fish can be tricky. Definitely chicken, if you're cooking a chicken breast or something like that, it's got to be to 165. You can actually insert the talking thermometer probe. It's made out of stainless steel. You keep the handle outside of the grill, of course, and then you can actually leave it in there, and you can press it while it's cooking. You can press the button, and it'll talk to you, and it's not going to harm your thermometer as long as the plastic's not touching any heat sources. But you
Yeah.
can get that information of what's happening inside your meat and place it because when I was talking with Jeff last time, how do you know when you're in the middle of the meat, which is where you really want to be? But with the George Foreman grill, you can actually you can use your tactile information while the meat is still cold to know
Sure.
that it's in the center, and then set it on the grill, close the grill, and you know that you're going to get the information from and with the model thermometer we have, the as the temperature changes when you press the button, it'll reflect those changes if it's getting hotter, if it's not getting hotter. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm glad you brought up the George Foreman grill because that is a wonderful tool.
It is. And the other question, and then I'm gonna mute myself. But the other question I have around the George Foreman is cleaning out that grease tray. The problem that I have I is that it wants to like spill the grease like all over the counter because I don't carry things as level as I used to because of my hand issue. So
Hmm.
what's the best way to carry that without having it, drip onto the floor or on your counter and then you have to you're making a huge mess, you're having to clean it up. Is there a good solution to that?
Yes, there is. So what you do is you throw that darn little plastic flimsy tray away. Just throw it in the garbage. So here is how I do it. So for people that haven't used a George Foreman grill, they call it a suitcase grill, and it basically has a hot surface on the bottom that feels like a pan with ridges. And then there's a hinges on it, and then the top part gets hot too. So when you put your steak in there and you close it, or your grilled cheese or whatever you're wanting to grill, it's cooking from the top and bottom at the same time at that same temperature. So you've got to kind of learn how long it takes for things to do. What I did at the Commission for the Blind, that was so frustrating. This is a missed design opportunity, because it wouldn't have taken them any problem to make that deeper, first of all, and also to make it attached to the legs of the grill. And the reason the grill, so just so people know, the grill is slanted so that any fats or grease or unnecessary things, they actually slide down and out the front of the grill while you're cooking. Even though it's closed, you're not going to squish the food. It's not completely closed. It's just resting on however thick your meat is, or your chicken, whatever. So the reason that's there is to catch those juices, to make sure that you're eating something healthier. It's flimsy, and it's easy to knock it around while you're trying to work on your grill. So I use a baking sheet, and I just get rid of that, and I put the baking sheet on the countertop. I do my grilling, the juices come down. Now I have to clean that big old thing, but there's really not that much juice if you're using, like a George Foreman size for four. There's maybe 2 tablespoons of juice, like hamburgers, if you have a high fat meat. And so you're not going to drip that when you're walking to the sink. It's big and awkward to clean, but it keeps your counters clean, and you don't have to deal with that whole thing that you were talking about, the spilling of the tray.
And what do you do
I
with the tray?
the baking tray,
The George Foreman tray.
I throw them away.
Oh, you do?
I used to give them to there's no other real use for them. They're flimsy and they're curved. They're shaped kind
Yeah.
of like a banana. And so they're really easy to knock around. It just was a bad design. They could have made those out of stainless steel, made them deeper, and made them hook to the legs, and the problem would have been solved.
Well, thank you for answering my question, and God bless.
Oh, same to you. So I wanted to answer another question. I can't remember her name, but it was the woman who's trying to cook, and her parents are guarded and a little bit.
Allison.
Allison. So Allison, you asked me a question about scrambled eggs. How do you know when they're done? And here's how you know when an omelet is done. Here's how you know when a over easy egg is done. And there's more than one way. But the thing is when you first put your scrambled egg mixture in the pan and you touch it, it's going to feel wet. That's just the texture will be wet. But as it cooks and the proteins start to, get harder and cook, it's going to change from wet to sticky. Big difference. Wet, you're going to pull away your finger and you're going to have wet egg on your finger. When it gets to the point where it's sticky, and once you're stirring your eggs around, if you're careful and bring your hand down just to the top of the food, not the stuff touching the bottom of the pan, but make a pile of it, let it cool for a second, and you touch it, the egg is not going to come away with your finger when it's cooked. It's going to be the proteins will have hardened, and it'll be a whole different texture. So I just wanted to say that. And that works the same way with omelets. If you're making an omelet and you're not sure if it's done or not, you can touch the top of it just for a second if you're careful. And if egg comes away with your finger, it's not done yet.
All right, your next hand is Kim.
Hi. It's good to meet you, Deborah. And
good to meet you as well.
From Brooklyn, New York. I wanted to ask, because you mentioned this earlier. You said that cooking is a skill. And you're definitely right about that, because when I was sighted, I actually attended a culinary school. Oh, wow. So I definitely know it's a skill. But what I wanted to know is, Um, now that I'm low vision, I wanted to know if you could recommend like any schools or programs that teach, low vision people to cook professionally like you do.
So, it's interesting. I don't know of any, but I was just on a conversation with someone in Pennsylvania this morning, and they said they thought there was one in Pennsylvania that caters. Now, when I went to culinary school, I was the only blind student. It was definitely, they were wonderful. They were worked with me. I can't sing their praises high enough, but I'd never heard of it. The only place that I've heard of are like or commissions for the blind and different, low vision centers where voc rehab training, where they're if you want to become a professional chef. But I would say if you already have that knowledge in your head, you just need to learn how to use the tools to make that knowledge in your head come forward. And I'd be happy to talk with you about that, like different ways of making attractive presentations, different ways of measuring accurately, different ways of accessing and reading recipes. All of that's part of it. So if you're ahead of the game, if you already have that culinary information. I had no idea what I was getting into when I went to culinary school. It's an amazing experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But there is a lot going on.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because I attended the Institute of Culinary Education in New York when I lived in New York. So yeah, I definitely did get the training. But
Okay.
Cooking is my
Oh,
dream.
okay, well, you just have to learn, and I can't do everything. I cannot devein a shrimp, a raw shrimp. I can shell it, but I cannot, there's not enough tactile information for me to know where that vein is coming down or that intestinal tract or whatever it is. So there's ways around it. I buy deveined shrimp with the tail on. So I can still, you just have to do it a different way when you're cooking with vision loss.
Okay. Well, I'd love to talk to you about that. That would be great.
Sure. Well, write to me at info@theblindkitchen.com and leave your number, and we'll schedule a time to talk. I love talking cooking.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thanks for attending.
Try.
Actually, you brought up another topic. I was calling to find out if you have a bread slicer.
I do not. I probably should get one, and I haven't sourced them yet. And the other is a bagel slicer. I need to source those too. But there
That would
is
be
there is a tool out there that is more probably I can't sell my insurance company won't let me sell blades, but I love this tool. It's called a Deli Pro. Deli Pro. And it is a knife that's serrated. It's a very sharp knife. They don't give them away, but they're really good. And on the side of it, it has a guide, an adjustable guide. You turn a knob clockwise to make that guide get skinnier, and then you do counterclockwise. And I think it'll open up to about an inch before the guide can't open anymore. And what you do is so let's say you're right-handed. You've got your bread, your loaf of bread, and you're going to put that guide, you're going to open that guide. You want your bread half an inch thick, every slice, or your meatloaf, or whatever you're trying to cut, your brisket, whatever. You press the guide up against the edged end of the bread, and then the knife blade is above the bread. And all you do is saw down. That guide is going to hold you to the end of that bread. It's going to move down with it so that you're not changing the width of your slice. And then once you get that slice done, you fold it over, you reset the guide again against that place you just cut, that end of the loaf, and you hold it there, and again, you run your knife down through it, you saw through it. And so now every piece is the exact same width. So that would be, they do have bread guides that are like wooden things where sticks come up and you can do it, but this one allows you to do so much more, and those other ones generally don't allow you to adjust them. This knife lets you adjust to different things. So if you write
I
to me,
had a knife,
oh, go ahead.
pardon me?
Go ahead.
I had a knife years and years ago that had a guide, and the guide actually was lower than the blade. So when you cut, the guide would hit the breadboard or the cutting board, and the knife would not actually be all the way through.
That's a good point. And this one is the same. It's very close though. It's very close to the same thing. But by the time you're all the way down to the bottom where it's going to hit, you can just raise the knife point up, and finish the cut without engaging the blade. I mean the guide anymore. You're already through the
That
bread.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good tool.
The
Yeah.
other question I had, with regard to measuring accurately, when it comes to pouring something, let's say, because my most recent thing was Worcestershire sauce into a half teaspoon. I told my daughter, I said, somebody should make like a syringe or a basting tool that you could just suck up half teaspoon, or you could just, I had to give my dog medicine one time in a syringe, and a neighbor cut a notch in the syringe so I knew how far to raise it to get the right amount of medicine to go in her mouth. And I thought,
that's
when it
great.
comes to measuring liquid into a half teaspoon or a quarter teaspoon.
So we do have a tool in the Blind Kitchen, and it's called the Liquid Dropper Bottle and Funnel. And it's basically like an eyedropper kind of thing where you've got the little rubber bulb at the top of it. And we send a funnel with it so that you can take your Worcestershire sauce, hot sauce, fish sauce, soy sauce, anything you only want to sprinkle a little bit on. We can't see it. It's just, and they make the bottles different, and the hole size is different. So I take that little plastic worthless thing off, and then I pour that liquid into it. We sell a 2-ounce bottle. And when you go, it's for measuring medicine. So it's accurate. And when you go to pull it out, it measures out a quarter teaspoon. So if you needed a half teaspoon of Worcester sauce, you just have to do it twice. And it's accurate because it was made for medicine. I mean, these are all unused things. They're brand new, but that's what they are manufactured for. So that is one way to do that. And then so then there's another thing we have that is our best seller. It's called wet measure spoons. And I'll try and go through it kind of quickly. But if you get the wet measure. So the teaspoons, it's a standard set of 4. And we have wet spoons and cups, and we have wet dry spoons and cups. And what they all have in common is they have 4 dots that are part of the handle. Are dots, stainless steel. You don't need to know Braille. You just need to how to count. So if you need a quarter teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, you're going to find the spoon that has 4 dots on it, or the cup that has 4 if you want a quarter cup. But what makes the liquid ones different is what you do. You're going to get a small spouted pitcher, and we don't send things to you that you probably already have. And so it's only about 2 inches tall, about 1 inch around. And if I want a half a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, I am going to count the dots, and 2 is on the bottom. So I know if it's got 2 dots, I'm going to find that one. But the handles, it's shaped like ladles. They're pointing up towards the ceiling. So when I go to put that spoon in that little cup, now the spoon I've got both my hands back. Because I've always said, if we're going to have vision loss, we should have been given an extra hand, because I never have enough hands. So you put the spoon in there, and then you're going to pour the soy sauce or whatever sauce you're wanting to do over, and I want you to overflow the cavity of the spoon. Don't overflow the little pitcher, just to make sure that spoon of the size you chose is completely under liquid. And then when I go to lift it, like ladling soup, it's easy to ladle a large amount of soup if you're using a ladle, because the handle's pointing towards the ceiling. You lift up. If I don't hear anything fall out when I'm transferring it to my target bowl, I know I have a level measurement, an accurate measurement, because I didn't hear anything drop and it was just underwater. So I know it's filled to the brim. But I still have that overflow in the cup. And so that's why we send you this special size funnel. And you put the funnel in the mouth of the bottle. And now instead of trying to put that liquid, direct that liquid back into the bottle that's about, the opening's about the size of your pinky, now you have about a 3-inch target. And it's quick and easy to put the liquid back in the bottle. So now you know you have an efficient measurement and you don't have any waste.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Rebecca.
I just wanted to say, first of all, I got the pie slicer recently and I love it so, so much. And I'm so glad that it's out there because that's been a struggle for me. But my question is, how do you flip an egg? I've always struggled with this. And I'm just wondering if you have any tips.
I do. So flipping an egg is difficult. The double spatula I spoke of earlier is not going to work because it's liquid on top when you go to, and it won't flip pancakes either. You're just going to have a mess on your hands when that top one comes down on the part of the food that's uncooked that needs to be flipped. So there is if you go to the website, there's a video called like how to cook an egg with vision loss, and the tool I use, and I use it in real time. I'm talking while I'm cooking the egg, so you know that I'm doing it. But it's a circle made out of silicone, which of course can stand heat, and it's about 3 inches around. And then it's got a little handle that sticks about 2 inches up. It's a stainless steel handle with a little tip of silicone on the top. Anytime you're cooking wet foods, eggs, pancakes, when you go to put them in the pan, it is anybody's guess where that food is going to run, unless you have a plan to be able to know where it is. And that's what those egg rings do. They sit in the bottom of the pan, and when you put your egg in them or you put your pancake batter in them, they are going to trap that batter in that predictable 3-inch circle. So it's going to make for a much more attractive presentation, and it's going to let you know exactly where that egg is in the pan, which makes things a lot easier. So I literally, when I'm cooking an egg, I find that handle, that little 2-inch handle, and I can touch that without any problem. I don't need any heat protection. Even though the egg is cooking, I can hear it bubbling a little bit, slight sizzle, just a little bit. But now I'm getting ready to flip it. I follow that handle down, kind of like a white cane. That's my guide, and it leads me right to the top of that silicone ring. And even though the ring is about a 1/2 inch tall, I can put it on there with no heat protection on my fingers and touch the top of that ring with no problem at all. I'm not getting burnt. It's far enough away from the hot surface of the pan to allow me to do that. And so then now I'm going to hold that silicone ring, that egg ring, on 2 sides. I'm going to hold it with my index finger and my thumb, resting on the top, pushing down. Again, no heat protection needed. And so then I'm going to take the thinnest spatula I can find so the food doesn't have to jump the curb, but its platform has to be large enough to hold that egg. So it's got to be at least 3 inches square, or, it has to have that much surface. Then I'm holding the egg ring. I know where the egg is because my fingers are touching the top of the egg ring, and I slide that spatula under as best I can, and then I go to lift it. And if I go to lift it and I can tell, oh, no, that's not underneath. That's not all on there. It's hanging over. I can send it gently down again and then readjust it, get back under there. Okay, now I can tell it's definitely on there. I'm going to pull the egg ring off, and I'm going to hold that spatula in place. And then I'm going to do the quick flip. So it's not perfect, but if I have not moved very much and I have taken the egg ring off, and I just do a quick 180, it's probably going to drop in almost exactly the same place I just took it out of. And then it's a matter of timing. Do you want your egg runny? Do you want your egg jammy a little bit? Or do you want it cooked over, cooked hard? That's all a matter of timing then. So if you go on the website, that video is available for free. You can see it, and it takes practice, just like anything does. But you can get it, and you have a tool available to you to let you know where the food is in the pan, what shape that food is in, and whether or not it's on the platform that you're trying to flip it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Deborah, we went past the 10 minutes, so we are at like 5 minutes.
Oh, goodness.
And yeah, so Heidi, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Two things. I actually was one asking about the search feature, and I actually have an induction cooktop flat stove, and I kind of figured out how to center a pan on the stove burners, but
Mhm.
I don't know if there's another way.
So with induction burners, I'm envious, by the way. With induction burners, they're quite costly, but they are definitely worth it. So with those, and that's what I used in culinary school, because they had like an 18 burner gas stove. So all of us would be over there. It would be impossible for me to know where my pan was, and who was where at one time, during the thing. So they let me use an induction burner. And the way it works is it connects with magnets. So if I could only cook with one pan it was about 16 by 16 inches square. If I had a little pan and I was cooking, I just need a little saucepan or something like that. I could touch that, even though that was on and we had it bump dotted so I would know about where I was at. I could touch that with my fingertips. It's only going to be hot. Only the pan is going to be hot, and a little bit of radiant heat from the pan.
Yep.
So on yours, you don't have to worry about centering it. If you can
Right.
hear the fan and it's on there, the disadvantage of that was I could only do one pan at a time on that. But the stovetop will have at least 4 and sometimes 5.
Yeah, we have 5. We have one that warms.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so you don't really have to worry about centering it.
And it will pull a little bit. That me and my boyfriend have both noticed that if it's off center a little, it'll pull in the direction that it needs to go to center.
Oh, that's interesting. So I've never
Yeah.
worked with a multiple burner stove. That's great.
And how do you search? Actually, my boyfriend's here so he can actually hear you.
Okay. Are you on the phone?
Yep.
Or yeah. So you're on the phone.
Yep, and it's on speaker.
And it's not you're not finding us. Are you using voiceover?
He has not, no.
Oh, okay. So I only use voiceover. So I don't know that I've ever searched on my phone, to tell you the truth. I love using JAWS in my keyboard. I like having my fingers, do the shortcut. So I'm not sure. Why don't you write to me at info@theblindkitchen.com
Okay.
and let me research that, because we're running out of time. So, but it's important. So please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Deborah, I think we have time for one more. Janine.
So I'll make this really quick. I do most of my cooking these days with an air fryer. And if I went onto the website, would you have like an air fryer basket? Would you have accessories that I could look at?
Good question. And the answer is no, because I can't, but we're not out of, so I do have an accessible air fryer, and I do have a microwave convection oven combination that works with my smart speakers. So I'm a big fan, but appliances, adaptive ones, are a whole nother area of specialized information. And that's not what I do. There is a show on ACB channels. I was on the channel on Monday, and it's called It's Electric. And they talk all about electric appliances for your kitchen, mostly your kitchen, but they also talk about your laundry room and stuff like that too. So we're making a page on my website that is going to be about electrical appliances, but I won't be the one discussing them. Plus, the other thing is technology changes so fast. I'd probably have 3 talking microwaves on my shelves right now, because I don't have the space or the budget to do it. But what I'm doing is putting links to other podcasts, videos, things where people that are more expert at it. And in fact, the woman, I remember I asked if you were Jeannie.
Right.
Yeah, she's an expert on the Instapot from what I've been told, and I can't
Yeah,
wait to get in touch with her.
And Deborah, we are actually like
Thank you.
30 seconds out of time. So
Okay.
would you like to make us a closing statement?
Yes, well, thank you all for your support and your curiosity. I definitely appreciate it. You can find out more if you want to email me. I do all the emails at info@theblindkitchen.com, or you can visit the website. Every video is audio described. Every tool comes in its own resealable package marked with large print and braille, so everyone has access to it regardless of your level of vision. And it tells you what the tool is, why it's blind friendly, and how to use and care for it.
Thank you,
Plus, there's a lot
Deborah.
of freebies too. Yep.
All right, everybody, I'm going to end it for all. Have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.